All right, bonjour. A fireside chat with Kurt Muehmel, head of AI, Dataiku, a phenomenal French company, and I, try un peu to speak a little bit of French, which is the most beautiful language. So, Kurt, here you are. We were just having a quick chat pre-call. Let's jump right into it. So, what is Dataiku, and what is LLM Mesh, and why should Fortune 1000 executives across the C-suite be so stoked on it?
Yeah, for sure. So thanks. Great to be talking. I've been watching your content for a while, so it's really awesome to be on this side of the screen. But yeah, so what is Dataiku? Dataiku, we call it the universal AI platform because it's a single platform for enterprises to do everything from analytics to machine learning, kind of what we're calling traditional AI now, all the way out now to Gen AI, all within really designed for an enterprise setting. So we've got nearly 1,000, we got several hundred customers. I think we said 700 customers recently. And these tend to be Fortune, 1,000, kind of global 2,000 size companies that need a platform in which to build all these capabilities for themselves. Dataiku's been around for more than 10 years now, right? So we've seen a lot of waves of technology come through. But of course, nothing has been quite like Gen AI, right? We were there at the forefront when companies were first doing their first, machine learning. They were testing out scikit-learn for the first time. They were, setting up a recommendation engine for the first time. We were helping them with that. So to see Gen AI come in, as it has since ChatGPT, obviously, grabbed everyone's attention, has been incredible. And so that's where now LLM Mesh comes in, because LLM Mesh is really Dataiku's answer to building Gen AI powered applications in the enterprise. And increasingly the word that we and everyone else is using to describe those Gen AI powered applications is agents or agentic applications. And so LLM Mesh is an architecture built within Dataiku that allows our customers, again, typically big enterprises, to go out and build the agents that they need at scale them across their business, manage them, and ensure that those agents are doing what they need them to do. Because it's kind of easy to describe how an agent works at a very high level, but getting it to work right and consistently and reliably and up to enterprise standards, it's kind of a different ballgame.
A great answer, and I love that. Right, so let's dig in a little bit. Agentic workflows, AI agents, compound AI systems, right? We're 2 years into ChatGPT. There's lots of large language models, and a new one seems to be launched, every 10 seconds here and there, right? So let's walk through, how LLM Mesh in a use case that's specific to whether it's financial services or sports media entertainment, the two worlds I come from. Let's kind of walk through an example of how LLM Mesh can enable a player in one of those two verticals to create an intelligent application that creates a meaningful business outcome.
Yeah, for sure. So, we've heard a lot about initial Gen AI applications. Let's call them the first generation, which is typically like a chatbot or a co-pilot, maybe has access to some documents. We've heard a lot about RAG workflows, right? And often where these are going to be deployed is, for example, helping a customer support agent to get better answers, to look up details in across a bunch of documentation or contracts and provide that back to the customer. But imagine now like a second version of that, where instead of just, the end user asking receiving the question and, typing that into a chatbot and getting some answers back and reading that back, maybe you could ask the LLM to decide what to do, to use different tools that are made available to it, to automate even more of that workflow of receiving a customer request, figuring out what the right answer might be, checking the results, and then sending that answer back. Because, of course, we know that LLMs can do a lot of things. If you ask your favorite chatbot, how should I solve this problem? It'll come up with an answer, which might actually be pretty good. And then maybe part of solving that problem is writing a little bit of Python or some SQL to do some analytics or to hit an external API to get that in and then combine all that back together and answer it back. Well, within that, right, that's where we start to see what's more of an agentic workflow, because that word agent means that the LLM is, essentially coming up with some decisions on its own about how I should solve this problem. So there's a bit of autonomy. It has tools made available to it, right? So it's maybe using some external systems to go and look them up. And there's things that are going on in the background that the user doesn't see. In contrast to a chatbot, where often, right, there's a lot of back and forth interaction. Well, this agentic workflow might work through that problem on its own, come up with a response, give it back to the human end user and say, hey, is this good? And the end user checks it and then sends it off to the final customer. But within that, right, like I said, describing it that way sounds pretty easy. And again, doing a POC or a proof of concept that kind of shows that you can do this, pretty easy too, right? But in the end, right, getting that to work really well consistently, that's the real challenge. And that's where LLM Mesh comes in to create really a consistent way for building those applications, to enforce different quality requirements, and to ensure that everything from the speed to the cost to which LLMs are being used are meeting guidelines or meeting the requirements of the organization, so that application can be delivered efficiently, but also safely and scalably within the enterprise.
Right on. So let's go into this notion of general versus specialized LLMs without getting too wonky here, because I tend to do that. But like, I'd love for you to help the audience understand from a let's say a non-technical senior business leader's perspective, help that person understand that you can use a criteria to optimize the LLMs that you select for the various component parts of that complex workflow to optimize for performance and cost. And you don't need, the biggest machine to do the smallest task, yada, yada, yada. For those that are non-technical, the yada, yada, yadas for them.
Exactly. Right. So I think the answer there is that most often, like the best version of one of those applications is most likely going to combine a number of different LLMs. It's not just going to be the biggest and most powerful LLM from your favorite LLM provider. That said, you may use that big, giant, super powerful LLM that can do everything from, translate into any language, write poetry, make jokes, generate images, right? All the stuff that we use it for all the time. You might use that for maybe like an initial step, because those big LLMs are really good at doing some of that reasoning and coming up with a good idea, a good plan of action for how to solve this problem. But then the next steps in that, again, writing some Python, writing some SQL, generating some analytics, that can probably be done more cost effectively and probably more quickly as well by a more specialized LLM, right? And then also, right, imagine that we're off in an even more specialized domain. We're no longer in a customer support within a financial services environment. Maybe we're in like a really intense like industrial environment, and there's really specific technical documents. You might want to have an LLM that's actually really, really well versed in those documents. Which means that either you took that from a provider, you bought that from a provider, or maybe you fine-tune that an existing LLM yourself. And so that means that you're going to want to build these workflows that are able to call different LLMs at different parts of that workflow, which means that you need to be able to access those in a consistent way, right? You need to be able to send data to them in a secure way. Another part of this, right, is maybe there's part of that workflow that needs to be super private, and so you need to run an LLM yourself, right, and not send it off to a third party. So that's running on infrastructure that you manage. And so all that's part of the LLM mesh. Basically, the LLM mesh, you should think about it really as providing three main things. One is a secure gateway to all of those different LLMs that you might need to use, as well as to all the different tools, databases, retrieval systems, everything else that you might want that workflow to access. The second is going to be let's say a federated group of services. So each one of these applications is going to need access control, it's going to need cost controls, it's going to need security monitoring, all sorts of things, right? And that are going to be common to all of the applications. So you want the LLM mesh to provide that in a standardized way, so you can be sure that you're doing those things in a enforceable and common way. And then the third, and arguably one of the most important things, is call it a catalog or a registry for all of that, right? For all of those different LLMs, for all of those different tools, for all of the different projects, all those different workflows that are being built up, because that's how your people, right, your employees are going to discover these things, use them, but it's also how those agents are maybe going to discover it and use them as well, since they're going to be reading that same documentation and saying, well, I'm going to write some SQL to go and query this particular customer database. I have access to the schema, which tells me exactly what I should be looking for. That all makes that possible. So once again, right, we need to have not only many LLMs, as we started discussing in this question, but also a lot of other things as well. And that's really what the LLM mesh architecture is seeking to provide, is that framework in which you can start building not just one, but hopefully many hundreds, thousands of these workflows.
Right on, right on. So last question before we wrap up. And it's always hard because the constraint of 12 minutes is brutal, but here we go. It sounds like what you're, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what we're saying here is that when large companies, small companies, mid-sized companies, start to really harness a diverse set of LLMs within all these various workflows, internal, external, et cetera, they're developing a new capability that could enhance a variety of different component parts of what they're already doing and or create perhaps new revenue streams, et cetera. Is that about right? And if so or not, Expand upon that real quick before we got to wrap things up.
No, that's 100% it, right? Basically, with all of these new technological capabilities that all of these different LLMs provide, right, we're seeing essentially the potential for unlimited automation acceleration within the enterprise, right? Exactly what though that is going to look like in the enterprise, that's hard to say. And so you're going to see two things happening. You're going to see a lot of, new companies, existing companies come and propose kind of off the shelf answers to accelerate workflows, and to do very useful things. And it's going to make sense for companies to buy a certain number of those. But the other side of that coin is that there's going to be this potential to build your own, build these own systems for yourself. And that's what we're really excited about, because we know that our customers, the businesses that we work with, they know their business better than us, right? They know where the opportunities are for automation, acceleration, new revenue streams. And what they need to be able to do is build the answer to those problems themselves so that they can own that capability and basically have that capability that nobody else has. And that's really where they're going to get into what we're calling, differentiated AI instead of just the same AI that everybody else is using. So we're really excited about that future and all those different ways in which across a business, regardless of industry, that they're going to be able to solve these problems for themselves.
I think that's fantastic. And I think one of the things you touched on there, and we'll wrap it up, but the expertise that you're enabling clients to harness and use in ways that previously were unimaginable, I think is outstanding and fascinating. And I'm going to add a link to your book, which I checked out, which was awesome. And I think it really broke things down in a way that was super universal with the language, yet, highly complex and recognizing the technical dimensions of it, which I thought was fantastic. So Kurt Muehmel, I want to say thank you very much. We're going to do the au revoir, je m'appelle Alec, comment ça va? That's about all I got. But merci, and hopefully I'll see you sometime in Paris, sooner as opposed to later. But shout out from Research Triangle Park here in Raleigh.
Appreciate it, Alec. Looking forward to it. Coming over anytime.
Thanks, man. Take care.